Hi, I'm Christopher, a research software engineer with Research Software Workshops, and it's a very warm welcome to Introducing Version Control with Git, Part 8. Now we're working on the Restoring Old Versions of a File section. The website is linked at the bottom, and when you go to that page, you should see something that looks something like this. Okay, we're at the command line, we're in our versioned dir. Now the point of a version control system such as Git is that you can move between different versions of a file, or really different versions of this working directory that we're working in. This means that you can safely make changes to files while in the knowledge that the old versions of the files are safely stored. This stops you from having to save multiple versions of a file yourself. For example, readme.md, readme01.md, readme01 catsgomeow.md, etc, etc. Now you can see all of the available versions of your working directory using the command git log. So I type git log and hit return. This is now printed all of the versions of the files of this directory that I have saved to Git. Now these are printed in reverse order. So you can see here we started on Monday at 2:50 with the very first version that we saved, where we added the file readme.md. Then at 2:57 we added in the version where we added in the new file something.md. At 3 minutes past 3 we fixed the typo where we made cats go meow rather than go woof. And now here the fourth version, and there are only 4 versions saved at the moment, was the one where we made some changes to show that I could add new lines to the something.md file. Now note, if you have a lot of commits, you might find that this puts you into a text viewer and you can scroll up and down by using the up and down keys, and you'll need to press the Q key to exit. In this case I have a small number of commits, so they're just printed to the screen. And don't worry if you don't see colour. Again, it will depend on your version of Git and exactly what your computer is doing. Now, as I said, each commit is listed one after another, starting from the latest commit and moving back to the first commit. Each commit represents a different version of our working directory, a different snapshot that we took, and each commit is given its own unique ID number. So here we can see the very first commit is given this ID number, 72B1E62 blah 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 blah. The second commit, or this commit where we made cats go meow, has got the ID number 95F2BC. It's a very long number. Now this version ID is a very large number which is written in hexadecimal. Hexadecimal is where you use 16 numbers in the base, so 0 to 9, and then A, B, C, D, E, F. So F is equal to 15, and then in that case 10 would be equal to 16, and then 1F would be equal to 31, etc. So this number here is base 16, so that's going to be 16 to the power a large number. So this is a ridiculously large number, more than trillions. It's trillions upon trillions. Now because this number is randomly generated, it is so large that it is basically unique. No one in the world at any point in time has ever randomly generated this number in Git ever before. And so this means that this number here, 9CF52BC blah blah blah, uniquely identifies this version of my directory where I made the change to make cats go meow. You can also see, as well as having the version number, we have the person who made the change, their name, in this case the name I put in when I did the git config command, the email address of the person who made the change, and then the date and time of that change. Hopefully you can now see why we had to tell Git about our name and our email, and this is where that information is placed. Now by default, git log will show all of the commits. You can limit the number of commits that it will show using git log. If I can type git log -n and then however many you want to see. So if I do 3, this is just showing me the last 3 commits. Now, as I said, the log also records the date and time of each commit, and indeed each commit represents the working directory at that specific point in time. So this commit here, 9C5F2, that really means the version of my versioned dir directory at 15:03 on Monday, January 18th, 2021. Now we can move our working directory through time by using the git checkout command. If I type git checkout and then I put in the version number, the ID number that represents the version that I'd like to go to, I'm just copying and pasting it because it's too long to type. If I now hit return, we have now got this complicated printout that we can ignore, but if I type ls, we've now moved back to a time when our readme.md and something.md was identical to this version. So 9c5f was the version where I fixed the typo. So if I look at readme.md, yep, the cat goes meow. But what about if I want to move even further back in time before I fix the typo? In that case, if I go back to this version, git checkout that version. Now, if I look at readme.md, we've gone back to the version where the cat goes woof. And indeed, if we go back even further, let's go back to the very first version. If I type ls now, not only is the cat gone woof, I can see that by looking at readme.md, the cat is going woof, but also with ls, this is even the version before we even had something.md. Now note, we have got effectively here a read-only version of this view of the directory in the past. You should not edit these files. This is almost like we're going back in time just to look at them. Now, nothing will stop you from trying to edit them, but you shouldn't. You will learn how to make it editable in the next workshop, Git for Collaboration. Now, what we need to do now is we need to come back to the future, so come back to the current time, and we can do that by typing the command by going back to the latest version. So we go git log, we'll do git checkout main, that's the one we want. Git checkout main will always bring us back to the latest version of the directory. So if I type ls now, we have something.md back. When I look at readme.md, we can see the cat goes meow. So once you've looked back in the past, when you want to come and look forward again to return back to the newest version, just do git checkout main. And indeed, when I do git status, we can see working tree is clean. That means our current directory is at the same version as the last version that we saved within the repository. Now, as I said, you couldn't edit the files from the past, but what we can do is we can bring files from the past forward into the present. Now we do that by using git checkout as well, but instead of just typing git checkout and the version number, so remember this was the git checkout command for the very first version, if I type the name of the file I'd like to retrieve from the past, so I do git log, get my versions, I want to go back to the very first version, do git checkout version, and then readme.md means go and find the version of readme.md that existed in this version and bring it forward from the past into the present. If I now look at the file, you can see this is the version where the cat goes woof. Now if I wanted to save this, I could type git commit -a, and if I did that, I would then save the past version of the file as the new version in the current version of the directory. But if I didn't want to save it, I can revert it back to the last saved version by doing git checkout main and then the name of the file. So we've reverted it back to cat goes meow. So git checkout version number file name will bring the version of the file from that version number from the past into the present, and I could save it using git commit -a. Or if I just want to look at it and then I want to revert back to the latest version, you would use git checkout main readme.md. And the git checkout main readme.md will always tell Git to discard any changes made to readme.md and to revert that file back to what it was like in the last committed version of the working directory in the repository. Note here that main is effectively a synonym for the latest version of the file, so the latest version that was committed. I could have typed in git checkout the latest version number directly, so this would also be fine, doing git checkout readme.md. But because I can't always remember what the latest version is and I don't want to look it up, by doing git checkout main, that means just bring the latest version. If we do git status, we can always know whether or not we have the latest version of all of our files because we see on git status that our working tree is clean. Okay, we've been now all the way through this material. We've now got one new command to add to our cheat sheet, which was our git log. And git log prints a log of the versions in the repository. And if you do git log -n and then the number you want to look at, you'll only see the last n versions. But we've also seen that there's more subtlety to this git checkout command. In the first version, this new thing we found is if we do git checkout version number file name, that means tell Git to bring the version, numbered version of the file, called file name, from the past into the current working directory. If version is not a version number but is instead main, it means get the latest version that was saved, so restore it back to the last saved version. This was what we had sort of in the last section, git checkout version. So we had git checkout main meant restore everything back to how it was. Well, actually git checkout version means go back in time and just view the directory on the whole directory as it was at that version at that point in the past. Whereas if version is main, it means check out the latest version, return everything back to how it was from the last saved version. Okay, so we now have 7 out of 10 commands within our git cheat sheet. We're making a lot of progress now. So we now have the exercise. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to use git checkout version, so choose the version number that you'd like to find that would move your working directory to the version before you change something MD. Verify that something.md is indeed the old version before you made the changes. Use git checkout main to then move the working directory back to the latest commit, and verify that something.md is that new latest version. Then use git checkout the version number something.md to revert something.md back to its old version, and use git commit -a to commit the old version as the new latest version. So we'll replace the old new version. I'm using old and new far too much. And make sure you have a good commit message to explain the confusion that this may cause. Then use git status to double check that your working directory is now clean. Okay, press pause, have a go, and when you come back from pause, I'll have a go as well. Okay, you've now unpaused, so I'm now going to work through this exercise. So I'll Control L first just to clean things up. And the first thing I need to do is find out the version number of the version before we change something.md. So I look at git log. Here we are. This was the version where I changed something.md EO71. Whereas this version here, 9C5F, this is the version before I changed it. So if I look at after I changed, remember I really wanted to add that new line, I can now do git checkout the old version number. And there we are. This is the old version where that line has not been added. Okay, let's come back to the present. So git checkout main will bring us back to the present. And that means when I look at something.md, there it is, it has that line that I added. Okay, next thing I need to do is bring that past version of something.md into the present. So remember that command meant move back to the past, move everything back to the past. But if I add in the name of the file I want to bring from the past, I add that onto the end. And now I have brought the past version of something.md into the present. And there we are, the line has been removed. If I do git status, we can see that something.md is indeed changed. It's not the same version as the last saved version, it's now the one from before then, from the past. But I do want to save this now as the current version. So git commit -a. I have permanently restored the old version in which I didn't add a line. and then git status. There we are, the working tree is now clean. Okay, that's the end of this section of the workshop. I look forward to seeing you in the next section.